Welcome to New Tracks Workshop. My name is Jim Kello. I'm the creator and host for New Tracks, where mentors help modelers build. Thanks so much for coming. I hope you come back often and tell your friends about our show. These Saturday workshops are a new project for New Tracks. They've resulted from comments I've received from modelers about scratch building and Chris Blackmar's interest in producing and leading this effort. The segments are structured like the popular build-along segments on our Wednesday evening shows, except these Saturday shows are designed to show modelers how to scratch build a model. I personally believe that scratch building is one of the most creative parts of model railroading, and I think you'll agree if you try it. Here is your opportunity to work with some skilled modelers to learn how to do it. You will learn the steps, the skills, the techniques involved in scratch building a model in any scale you want. There are no kits to buy, only the needed scratch building supplies. The plans that will be used for the model, you can download on your computer at no cost. The show's moderator, Chris Blackmar, is a very talented and artistic modeler, and he and his guest will guide you through the complete scratch building process, one small step at a time. After all, that's what mentoring is all about. If you're a beginner, I hope you'll join in and experience the thrill of completing a scratch-built model and being able to stand back and say, I built that. If you're a more experienced or advanced modeler, I hope you'll join in and offer your advice and knowledge to less skilled modelers, and even get some fresh ideas yourself. The live shows will, of course, be recorded on our YouTube channel, so you can refer to the information later if you need to. In addition, I hope you'll visit our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and subscribe. You'll need to confirm the email that you received to verify your address. And after that, you'll receive all of the notice of our future shows, as well as the login links to attend. If you would prefer to watch the series on YouTube, you can do that by going to our channel, New Tracks Modeling, ring the bell, and click all. Therefore, you'll get all of the notice for the start of all of our future shows on the channel. If you can spare a little time, I hope you'll consider joining our management team to help us plan and produce any of our future shows. Please contact me at jimkello@newtracksmodeling.com, and let's discuss your interest. So welcome to the New Tracks Workshop. I look forward to seeing your finished models and, of course, hearing any suggestions for future shows you may have. Now, here is Chris Blackmar to start your scratch building journey.
And let's get this show on the road. Before we start, Ken, can you verify, or Will, that I got the YouTube thing going, the recording going okay over there?
It's running on the YouTube.
Okay, I did get it okay. I was having a argument with the thing when I was trying to kick it off here, and Greg's laughing in the background. It's like, oh boy. Okay, well, welcome everybody, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Just a real brief note before we get going today. I am going to go back to what I had originally envisioned my format to be for this show. We got a few comments that kind of made me rethink what I was doing here. And so I'm going to go back to what I had originally envisioned for the show. And it's a little bit different from anything that I've done before on this show. At this point, I have completed giving the volume of depth of backgrounds that I feel that the beginning modeler should have. So if we had anybody out there in Zoom land that has never picked up an X-Acto knife, I think they're up to speed where they can actually start making some cuts and get bloody. So we're going to start moving forward with that. And I'm going to go back to what I had originally intended to do. I had talked about I was going to go through and kind of catch up a little bit with my work so that I was a little bit more in line with what a lot of you are probably expecting to be at this point. But I thought about that and I decided, nope, I'm going to go back and do it the way that I really should be doing it and getting that thing going here. Let me see here. One other thing, did we have, I'm not seeing Father Ron on here either. Okay. Father Ron, if you're there, if you can speak up. I don't think he's here today. Okay. The other thing is, what was I going to say? Oh, don't forget about using the pastel coupon code of Railroad 10 at Dakota Arts. We went through last week in detail on looking at soft pastels. I hope those of you out there that sat through that entire show got some value from that. I tried to cover some things that is not normally seen. I did need to go back and touch on one other thing that I did not complete, and that was Greg's comments about pigments. And briefly on pigments, you know, the soft pastels are nothing more than the pigments held together by a binder. The advantage that pigments has over pastels, the really large advantage, is number one, you get a uniform particle size as far as the pigment coloring goes. But number two, and the real big factor, is that pigments are a uniform color. Pastels are typically blended to get the various hues and tones and shades and tints that they are looking to get. And so sometimes if you try to go through and blend or wet mix a couple of your pastels together, you'll get something that is unexpected. And that's because the manufacturer of that particular pastel has included in the pigment mix a pigment that you weren't expecting. Maybe you were thinking it was going to be a blue, and in fact, it's a dark green or something that can really kind of throw off your color mixing. So, but really the biggest thing, other than just being ready to brush right on, the pigments are just super uniform, but they are typically very, very color fast. The other thing that I needed to touch on was a comment that was made about my pulling out the student grade pastels. It was my bad. I totally forgot to bring up to you guys that I maintain a big batch. I've got about 4 boxes of those student pastels because I use them in my clinics, because I provide for free all of the materials in my clinics to my people that do them. And I typically run clinics all day long. So I'll have 50 to 70 people in a course of a day for our clinics. And if I was to use real pastels, it becomes very expensive very quickly. The student grade pastels are very, very cheap. I mean, you can buy 7 to 10 of the, or one of those packages of pastels at a of the student grade that would cost you 1, maybe 2 pastels of the artist pastels. So I use a lot of the student pastels in my clinics, and thus I had them handy. The thing about the student pastels is the pigment grind in them is typically not as good. They typically use inferior pigments. There's a lot more binder there. The pigments are not as rich. Sometimes they're not even color fast. So I do not recommend the use of the student grade pastels, unless you're just playing with it to try to get an idea of it. But if you want it to last more than 3 or 4 years, I would definitely move up to a artist pastel, spend the couple of extra bucks. You'll be a whole lot happier. Those student grade pastels just don't cut the mustard in comparison to a real artist pastel. And if you go out and buy yourself 2 or 3 of the student pastel packages, and then 1 or 2 of your regular artist pastels, you will find that probably after using your regular artist pastels for, just a couple of brief walls, you'll end up just taking those student grade pastels and putting them in the local dipsy dumpster. So anyway, enough of that. So I am going to say that today's formatted show is really going to be dependent on you guys. And I'm going to need you guys a whole lot for your input. And with that, I'm going to go on ahead and start off the show. I'm going to first of all move my computer. And I need to pin this sucker down so that you guys can see me. And hopefully you guys can see me on that. And with that, let's get going. And I am on my desktop, and that's where I'm going to live for pretty much the rest of this show. Yeah. Sorry, I get a pop-up screen on my camera phone that I'm using. Okay, I got templates. I've got couple of different kinds of wood, and let's see here. I don't know, Will, if you can, let's see here. I need to, sorry folks, I'm trying to get myself off of the screen and okay, and okay. Anyway, so I've got 2 things of clapboard siding. Both of them are HO scale, and we are looking at 11-inch wide boards. I also have 1 pack of a thinner scribe siding, and this has just vertical scribing on it. So I'm going to do my buildings out of a combination of these 2 things. I grabbed 2 packs. There's 2 sheets in each one of the packs, and that's what I'm using. So I'm going to start with, excuse me, the first.
Chris, we lost your desk.
You lost my desk. That's interesting. Because I'm showing it here. Shrink.
There we are.
Okay. I know why we lost it, because how do I guess I need to.
You're okay now, Chris.
Yeah, no, I need to
You can pin it.
pin it. Okay. Well, it says remove pin. That's the problem.
I've got you spotlighted, so it should be fine.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You're okay.
Okay. So that's what happened. All right. So I'm going to go on ahead and just cut this out. Now, for the folks in YouTube land or future viewers, there's no right or wrong way to do this. And I'm going to try to bring in our panel of experts who, a lot of the model builders that are live with us right now are, quite frankly, better modelers than I am. And so I'm going to try to get their input on doing this with me and how they do it. I'm going to show one way right now. I may change, go to a different way to just kind of show how to do it. I'm just going to go through and kind of show. And while I'm doing this, we're going to talk about the whole process and the ins and outs of it. And again, this is a change in format, guys. So I'm going to need all of your input. If we can just kind of go down through them, and I'll let you kind of go through and talk to the folks there on the chat in your order, kind of see where everybody's at on it, if they're doing this and particular build, and if not, what are they building on their workbench right now, material and scale, and if it may be applicable to anything that we're doing. And I'm just going to go on ahead and set this up. And I'm going to use the Clapboard Siding on this. And I'm going to pull out one sheet here. Come on. I know I can get it out. And all I'm going to do is take it, put it up against my workbench, and make sure you know which way the claps go. Can't tell you the number of times that I have gone through and mismarked. And I'm going to use that. I'm going to take, don't know if you can see this, it is a clear triangle. Should have grabbed my colored one. I'm not going to mess with it. You guys know what I'm doing here. I'm putting down the triangle to also act as a base. So you can see that I've got everything up against my little cutting board there, or excuse me, my guide. And I'm going to take a good sharp pencil and I'm going to mark through just this thing here. And that'll kind of give me the basic thing. And can I get both of them out of it? No, not quite. So, okay. So, and with that.
Hey, Chris,
Yeah.
while you have the pencil out, I just wanted to mention to others, like you, I've learned the hard way when doing some scratch building, how important it is to keep clapboard oriented right. And whenever I'm going to be working from the back, I'll grab a pencil and mark the upside. It's saved me a few times.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I was going to come through and mark the back side, and I do a similar type thing. But I was going to cut it out first, but I then mark the side of the wall. But I do mark it at the top. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. And thanks. I'm going to grab my little number 16 blade here. And switch over to the thing, deal. And all I'm doing here is using my number 16 blade. And here's the number 11, the number 16. You guys know what's going on. Number 16, I find that I've got a lot more control with it. So I'm just going to make my initial scribe marks with that. And I'm doing nothing more than really creating just kind of a scribe mark on my cutting. And then the other cut that I'm going to do is right underneath this one clapboard going across here. So I'm not going to bother marking that because I'll use the clapboard as a guide. And then I'll come back. Now the question is to you guys out there, should I have gone through and put a wide piece of tape on the back of this sucker to prevent it from splitting or tearing or anything before I started cutting? What is the general consensus out there? I need an interactive comment session. Come on, guys.
I usually do my cutting from the back, just so I don't kind of nick any clapboards in case I want them to be smooth, but I've never put any tape on the opposite side to prevent splitting it, not at least not with like 1/16 inch stock.
Okay. How about some of the other guys? I know
Yeah.
there's some other guys.
Yeah, if the piece is large, I don't. If it's a very small piece and very thin clapboard, I do. But most of the time, the pieces I use I don't have a problem with splitting on siding like that.
Okay.
I think the secret is to use a number of cuts,
Yeah.
about 3 or 4 cuts to get through and you won't have any problem.
Yeah, and as everybody can see, I've been plainly doing many cuts. Is somebody out there building this thing? And I just broke the tip of my blade. How about that, sports fans?
Time for a new one.
Yeah, it is. That's bizarre. Luckily, I keep multiple blades loaded. Number 11 again. And we're almost through this one piece here. How about styrene? Anybody working with stock styrene have any tricks to cutting sidewalls with that?
I'll usually just scribe it and snap it. That seems to be so easy.
Okay. What about the burr that you get? Do you use just the X-Acto blade to remove it, or do you use a different deburring tool, or?
It depends. If it's on an inside and it's not going to affect the joint, I don't worry about it. That's why I will try to cut something like that from the back, because I know the blade actually raises it a little bit. If it's from the front, I'll usually just use a fine sanding stick or something.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
I'll second that
guys.
approach.
I'm sorry?
I'll second that approach.
Okay.
Yeah,
quite frankly,
it works pretty well. You need to get the score leading up to where the point intersection is reasonably good near the point intersection. Don't try and snap it before you've got enough depth of cut there.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's another reason sometimes I'll do styrene from the back is you might want to go a little past the intersection of a point so that you get a clean snap. And if it's on the outside, it might show.
Yep, pay that.
Okay. Well, I totally concur with all of that. How about now? Here I got down to the end, so I took my blade and I just flipped it around. And what I'm talking about here is I'm right now kind of going through the basic cutting and removing the stock techniques for the people who may be viewing this on YouTube in 6 months that have never picked up a X-Acto knife. And I just got a little bit off there, but that's okay. I'm not going to sweat that cut. And so what I'm doing though is with this, I'm kind of creating a groove, just kind of like a score in the wood. And then I'll go back to my number 11 and use it to finish the cut. Who out there is actually building this, and out of what material? What I'm doing though is with this, I'm kind of creating a groove. I'm sorry, I can just barely hear whoever it is. Go back to my number 11 and use it to finish the cut. Who out there is actually building this? And out of what material? What? I'm getting feedback. I don't know why.
It may be somebody watching it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, I've got a question. Do you have any tricks when you're cutting with the grain like you were just doing? Every now and then, if the grain's not going the direction I want to go, I really have to force my blade against whatever straight edge I'm using to keep it from following the grain. And I'm not always 100% successful.
Yeah, that's why I go through and I use that number 16 blade at the beginning. And I basically just score it like you would styrene, except I make a little bit deeper score mark. And then I get out the number 11 and cut it, is exactly for that reason.
I'll have to try that. I always have my number 16 X-Acto sitting there and I hardly ever pick it up.
Yeah, it's actually a handy blade if you can get yourself to put down the number 11. I've got a block here. This is from my True Sander, but you can do this with a piece of wood or something. This is just a couple of inches long. I think these things are like 3 or 4 inches. Yeah, they're 4 inches. And all it is I've got like 5 different grits of sandpaper on this thing. So I, can use different grits right off the top. And to kind of get whatever I'm doing. So, but 4 inches, it fits in the palm of my hand really nicely. So if you have a true sander, just go through and use some rubber cement and put yourself some different grits on different sides. If you don't have a true sander, which comes with this little aluminum sanding block, just grab yourself a hunk of wood and make yourself a sanding block. But the tip is to put multiple grades of paper on it, and you're ready to roll. Okay, so that brings me to this one, and I am off by about a 64th of an inch, probably, between having 2 full sides of walls. So the question is, I guess, should I just cut it to keep it in this stock here? So you can see here, if I make it about everything's in reverse. Come on. You can see how far off. I mean, it's 1/8 or so of a clap. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, Chris, looking at your end walls, are both of those walls supposed to be the same size?
Yep, they're pretty close to it. Rich, by the way, folks, I'm working without my templates because my printer ink, I ordered some printer inks and I don't know, I can't get them to work right. They spit out only partially, so I don't know what's going on. So,
Well, no, the end wall there looks like you've got a higher front wall than a back wall, at least the piece sitting there on your work.
Yeah. Well, that's the end wall. Yeah, that's the end wall, but you're right. And so that's this side and that's this side. So, yep, you're right. And I'm wrong. Good catch, Greg. Thank you. So, woo-woo. All right. So now we got to go to the other
Chris,
side.
that's 12 feet on the right and 16 on the left.
Okay. All right. Well, so I've got this side. So now I've got to do the other side. So make sure my claps go. And so this is the short wall. And like Greg said, I mark mine to the top, but and because I tend to paint over it, and this is short. So, all right, and I'm just going to put that one aside for right now. And that's why I have you guys watching me and keeping me straight. So if I come down here, oh, look at that. It came out just perfect. on this one, so. Woo-hoo. I don't know if you guys can see, but. And then that means I've got to come the distance over.
Chris, to answer your question as to who's building it, I'll be building an ice house, but I'm only at the drawing stage.
Okay.
Inspired by this whole project, these whole Saturdays, so I'm going to let you get ahead of things, but I'm just at a drawing stage right now.
Okay.
Different layout than the drawing that you were using as an inspiration. I went to a museum site in Calgary, the Glenbow, and took a look at all the different ice houses and bunkhouses that were used, because in Canada I modeled transition era, and a lot of times it was ice harvesting either on the river or typically on the lakes.
Uh-huh.
So I was looking at those, and there's some neat things, because you've got, not only do you have the actual ice house itself, but there's all the scaffolding in the winter and the mechanism that goes all the way out to the lake, to the ice surface, where they cut the ice and then it gets hauled up using a set of chains to get brought into the ice house, and then it gets stacked up for use all summer long. So I'm in the process of drawing something up for that.
Okay. And so I'm gonna go, come on, I'm grabbing my number 16 blade again here. And that's what I'm gonna use to create my vertical cut. Again, making sure the claps are going the right way here. And I'm gonna make the vertical cut. And this is just a scribe again. And so I'm kind of going with what Greg had mentioned. And the nice thing about this, when I'm doing it, I can keep this number 16 blade really vertical to the work surface, and make that scribe cut. And because it's a shorter blade, I can keep more of the blade in contact with the side of the ruler. So anyway, so I made like 2 or 3, I didn't count them. And then I'll switch over to the number 11 blade. And you guys are all familiar with this. And okay, how about somebody else? I know that Richard's building it, and I know that he's doing it in wood, but I don't know. I'm assuming it's HO scale. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And Rich, what did you use scribed, or are you doing yours board by board?
Mine is board by board, interior and exterior.
Okay. And so your exterior walls, are you doing a clap, vertical board? What are you doing?
I use some cardstock, and I glued on 4x4 interior studs, and then I put horizontal boards butted up to each other horizontally on the inside and the outside.
Okay.
I can show my screen maybe and show interior and exterior, but it's not glued together, but they
Okay.
are finished for now.
Okay. Why don't you go on ahead and do that? And I'm just going to continue cutting here. And that'll give you guys something else to look at, and you can kind of discuss what type of glue you used, why, and any other tricks of the trade that you used. I believe you have screen share rights. There we go. I see your walls, Rich. Just me, or is anybody else not hearing him? There he is.
Oh, we can see it. We can see it.
Okay,
I can
those
see 'em.
are the interior, those are the interior boards where the cold storage area will be. The walls with no boards horizontal are the front office. So the one with the freight door opening in the center top is my partition wall between the storage area and the office area.
So Rich, those poor workers didn't even get any insulation to keep them warm, did they?
No, they don't have a stove in there either. Can you hear me talk?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I gotta be careful what I say then. I thought I had to press down the space bar to talk.
They used to use sawdust in those days for insulation.
Yeah.
I got another picture I want to show, but or I want to show another picture, but I can't move the participants. They're in the way of my picture. How do I do that?
If it's that thing on the right with all the little pictures in it,
Yeah.
on the top on the left is a little tiny space. If you click that, they all disappear.
Okay, can you see that picture?
No. There we go. We see it now.
Okay, the top left card wall is my back wall, which I haven't put any boards on that yet because I thought it was going to be butted up to the building number 2. Actually, I don't like the height of building number 2, so I'm not going to build it the same as you are, Chris.
Okay.
The front wall, I actually grabbed the building wall on the left, which has no wood on it, and had it turned over thinking that I had the correct wall when I started putting on my boards. And you notice the 2 areas that are boarded over look like 2 windows that are boarded over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happened with that is in real life, when you have a setback, what do you do to deal with it? You deal with it and move on. Well, in the modeling world, you do too. So I had to reboard it back up. And luckily, I didn't cut into my door area or my other 2 windows. So I boarded it up. And now that can either be where I put my cold storage sign, or it actually gives a little uplift to the area. It gives it what's the word I want?
Gives it
Well, I'll tell you, Rich, I
character.
mean, you know, they've had to repair stuff in the real world too. And sometimes you see windows covered over or boarded over and
I could have scrapped it, but I decided to leave it in there, gave it a little character.
yeah.
So anyway, the other two walls will be that way. The wall to the left on the bottom will have a sliding freight door on that. And I'll show you how I build that probably the next time. I don't have it started yet.
Okay. All
What are
right.
you using to glue that clapboard on?
Well, I use gel CA. I used to use Type Bond wood, Type Bond 2, but after trying to glue two boards perpendicular to one another and waiting about an hour before it glued together, I started using this stuff, and it's called Fix-All. It's a gel CA, comes in a 1 or 2 ounce tube. And I usually get it downtown for like $1 a tube. So it really works well. And what I do is if it does squish out, I scrape it off immediately with an X-Acto knife or rub it with my finger, and you can still use wood stains and paints over that without a problem. But I just make sure it doesn't ooze out. But it attaches the wood really well. I use it for shingles as well. I forgot what I'm doing here. I got 2 mouses in my hand. Grabbed the wrong one. That's all.
Okay, well, if we come back to my screen, just for whatever, to the desktop here. I've got the 2 walls cut out, and while Rich has been talking, I went through and marked the back of my walls. You can see the arrows here and shrink. And so that I know the clapboards, that's a real good tip. I will be covering that up with paint here in a little bit. But anyway, it's just a reminder here that you've got it. The thing of it is that if you make your arrows or your marks small, but you put them in fairly deep, when you go through and paint the back, because I'm going to paint the interior here to just kind of darken it and to seal the wood primarily, that will that indentation will kind of show through in things. So that brings me, all I did was here, I normally use a true sander, Northwest Shortline true sander, but for the beginning students out there who don't have all the fancy tools, I'm just going to use my sanding block, stand them up vertically, and just make sure that I've got the edges all at the same. And I did that while Rich was talking, but anyway, so that's where I'm kind of at. So now I've got all of these things cut out and the 2 different heights of walls, if you will. And so the next thing is for me to go through and put in a couple of doors and window cuts. But before I do that, the next question is, do I want to throw in a preliminary stain now or not? And if so, do I just use a solution stain, or do I do it with a soft pastel and throw it on? So let's talk about the basic process here. Do you guys normally make all your window cuts and door cuts prior to throwing on your preliminary stains? Or do
Yes,
you
I do.
Do it after?
Yeah, I'll usually cut all the windows and everything first, because you kind of run a risk of damaging your wall and having to redo it if you cut the window in the wrong place. Well, none of us do that. And I just figure, why waste the stain if I have to redo the wall? It's not like you're going to damage the wall by staining it. So I do whatever is most likely to damage it first. Then if I have to start over, I haven't done other steps.
Okay. Other comments from some of you other guys out there? I know that, like Pat Rivard, I know you've done these things a million times. What is your thoughts on that?
I do all my cutting first before I do any staining. I try to get all that work done before, because it might warp on you and more difficult to see where you got to cut.
Okay. How about you, Bern? What do you think?
I'm just watching because I don't work in wood. I've been doing some kits that have metal sides, and I've done some black work using soapstone, actually, that I cut up into little blocks and I build a building. So this is kind of new to me. I'm learning some techniques here that I've never used before.
Okay. And how about a Doug Sassman? Let's bring somebody in that I don't know or had very little interaction with. Doug, if you can unmute yourself and give us your input. This is yeah. It is Sassman, so I don't know. I guess we're not going to get Doug. Doug, you'll have to unmute yourself. You there?
You say who?
Yeah, Doug Sassman.
That's me. Just a minute. Lost my picture.
Okay. Well, Doug, while you're kind of looking for it, what are your thoughts on this? Do you build in wood, and do you do it, or
No, I'm not.
do
No,
you?
I'm not doing the ice house.
Uh-huh. But when you build your models, I'm assuming you've built in wood. Is that correct?
Yes, a lot of them out of wood.
Okay.
Some of them I get styrene kits.
Okay.
That thing.
So what I'm hearing here is kind of a general consensus of to go on ahead, make all of your cuts prior to staining the wood. I'm going to do it kind of both ways here. On one panel, I'm going to pre-stain it. On the other panel, I'm not, and we'll just kind of see what differences we kind of run into as we're going through it. I'm just trying to show different modelers, different things, techniques and different things as we're moving through. Because again, there's no right or wrong way to do all of this. Myself, when I'm
there's
building
about 50.
Go on
There's
ahead.
about 50 ways of doing something.
Yeah. When I'm going through and I'm personally building, I tend to go through and, like everybody else, I do make all of my cuts first beforehand. The reason that I do that is so that I can stain the insides of the cuts, and that kind of helps seal the wood there. But I'm going to go through and use some A&I on the short wall and just start to stain it. This is my bottle of my A&I stain. Boy, it's hard to get used to being backwards. So on a 1 pint for a light A&I, I take 1 teaspoon of India black ink, and that is non-waterproof India black ink that I put into 1 pint of alcohol here. And this one is a 91% that I had bottle. Actually, it's got the 99% in it because I use this as just a refill. And again, guys, when you're going through and doing this, you are trying to control to some extent. It's not just sloshing it on. You do want to control it. So I'm going to grab about a number 2 round, and this is just a soft #2 round brush. And I'm just gonna go through and add some alcohol to this one thing here. And I don't know, I gotta come down here. I gotta move my target so that I know where I'm at. And the other trick that I use when I go through and add alcohol to any side of the wood is I always do both sides. And so, excuse me, my claps are actually going to sit like this. So I'm going to go through and add more of my stain down at the bottom of my clapboards, just to kind of give it a little bit of a darker type hint down here. And okay, any of you other guys have thoughts on pre-staining? I need some input from you guys.
Well, Chris, one thing I'm wondering about, so you're going to stain both sides, and I know that can help some with warping, but I found with things like clapboard, any kind of milled wood where it's flat on one side and milled on the other, if it's not braced, you're going to get some warpage. There's ways of getting around that by maybe weighting it and stuff.
Right.
But do you never brace your wood before you do any staining?
Normally I brace before staining. I'm just trying to show here some of the potential dangers that we can run into doing it this way versus the other way. So the other trick, but yeah, you're absolutely right. But I'm also adding a controlled stain instead of throwing a whole lot of stain on it, and that more controlled application will help minimize my warping a little bit. It won't prevent it, but it may help prevent, kind of minimize it a little bit. So if it does tend to warp. The other thing that I'm going to do here is instead of using the actual stain on the back, I'm going to come through and just flood the back with a clear alcohol, because the stain on the front is an alcohol base anyway. And so I'm just going to kind of flood this a little bit. Again, it's not a just dunk it, but it's just a kind of an application. Cleaning my brush is what it really amounts to. And so now I've got it on both sides, and I'm going to just put it down. And like Greg noted, I'm going to throw it underneath a little bit of a weight here real quick, and just to kind of help it out a little bit. We'll just let that sit for a couple of minutes. And I don't think you guys could see it, but I cleaned my brush and stuck it on a paper towel on the side. What I'm trying to do here is not make this a watch me build video, but I'm trying to get you guys to talk about the steps and the processes as we're going through it. So please feel free to make comments and stuff. How are we doing on time, by the way?
We're almost to the hour.
How's
If
that?
you wanted me to run something in particular, we could.
Yeah, I've got to do the sponsorship ads at about the hour. So we're going to run the ads for the folks that bring us this type of video and are helping us on this. So the first one is going to be from O-Scale Resource Magazine and S-Scale Resource Magazine. And if you guys have not seen it, the O-Scale Resource Magazine, I just got notified this morning of the new issue. It's got a wonderful looking tree tutorial in it. Looks to be about 8 or 9 pages. I just gleaned the magazine real quick. And it's also got from the last My Build section here from a month ago, our submissions to Chris. And so there's like 3 or it's 2 columns, 3 pics each, or 3 pictures in each column. And so for the people that submitted their builds to the My Build, it's in the magazine and you can go take a look at it and things. So anyway, I'm going to shut up and let the sponsors say their piece, and then we'll come back and pick up.
Welcome to the world of scale, O and S railroading. We are your resource for all O and S scale modeling. Both our magazines are advertiser supported and free to read online, download as a PDF, or even print. All advertisers are hot linked to their website, so if you see something you like, just click. Please check out our websites for the current issues. All back issues available free for the O-Scale Resource and the S-Scale Resource magazines. And, if you are a manufacturer, distributor, or retail establishment, please contact us through our website for advertising opportunities.
Okay, and then also we have a second sponsor for this show, and it's actually the New Tracks channel. And in the O-Scale Resource magazine this month, you'll see a ad that was put together by the team here. And I will show you that ad briefly, and you can take a look for it. It's on an earlier page in the newest release, but the ad is this ad right here. And that is the channel that's Jim Kello is building and kind of sponsoring this show. So there we go. Okay, so we've done our advertising for the day. Woohoo! Let's move forward. And as I said, I use these little teacups or tea light candle holders to hold things. And I'm going to go ahead and get my windows out. And actually, I need a window and a door. Come on, I had it in my hot little fist and threw it back in here by mistake. Here it is. And my door template for the sliding door. And I
Hey,
have
Chris.
a grant line on the back of this. So yes.
On the subject of glues and of white glues, just to share something that I've been using with reasonable success, because I know you guys in the US, you have access to Eileen's tacky glue and everybody talks about that, except I can't get that here in Europe. It's too specific. But what I can get here is Titebond. And Titebond makes, in their carpentry lineup, besides the standard 1, 2, and 3, they make a glue that they call a Titebond no run, no drip wood glue. It's extra thick. It sticks. It's almost like using CA, and it dries crystal clear.
Wow.
That I've been able to find. I transfer it to a little mini glue bot, and it works really good for anything that's wood, and even some, if I've got to use for windows, use it kind of like a glue or like an Eileen's tacky glue. It works quite well. For anybody who can't find some of the glues that are often used or talked about in US media.
Okay. Is that an interior or an exterior glue?
It's an interior glue. It's used typically for putting up moldings, crown moldings.
Okay.
When it's got a real good tack, you can put a bit of glue on it, and the carpenters can use it when they're putting up crown molding. They can just put it on, hold it for probably 30 seconds, and it sticks.
Okay. And if you needed to separate pieces, can you apply water to it? And
I've never tried. But I'm being a standard PVA and it is not an exterior grade. I'm assuming that warm water will eventually dissolve it, but I'm just guessing.
Okay. Well, thanks for the information there. We had I don't know, Rich, you had brought up a gentleman's name. And I've forgotten it. He's a military modeler. I don't know if he's joined us or not.
No, he's not building it, but I don't see him on here today. Maybe he didn't get a chance.
Okay, I was hoping to get some input. Rich had invited a military modeler from one of the major military forums, and I thought he might be joining us today, so I was going to try to elicit some input.
I would like to say I will put it in the chat. There's a lot of sites on there, as well as railroad modeling, and the military modelers do excellent work with some of their newer paints, and I've been over there looking at and admiring their work using those paints.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go on ahead and cut out the space for the first window here. And Rich, how far in from the in wall is that window roughly? Rich?
No, I'm here, but you can put it anywhere you want on that wall. Which wall do you have? The 12-foot high one?
This is going to be the wall, the lower. Actually, it's the taller wall. So yeah, it'd be the taller wall. So it's going to be on the in our concept drawing, the back wall. So I think it comes in, I think there was a window there about 2 or 3 foot in, was it not?
Yeah, you could put it where you want, but I put mine about 3.
About 3, okay. So about 3 foot in. And don't forget, I've got to add some trim to this, so I got to account for that trim. So I'm going to set it so it's basically about 2.5 foot. So, or excuse me, it should be about 3.5 foot.
That distance not set in stone. You can put it where you want.
Yeah. I'm going to go with about 2.5 foot. I had it right the first time, and just kind of make a little mark, and just for myself so that I kind of know. And even though I just made a slight punch mark down, if my window board trim doesn't cover it up, the punch marks, then I can just call it nail holes and call it good. So, and then I'm going to go through, and to make it easy to handle, I just stuck my window on a piece of low tack tape on the back side. And then that way I can come through and grab the dimensions real easy. And I'm just grabbing the dimensions here. This is not the sill dimensions. It's the actual casting and where it will actually fit in the hole. And so the window framing, if you will, is what the back side of the window framing is what the caliper points are resting on right now. And then that gives me a width. And so I'll go on ahead and mark that. And I've got a second mark in here. And then, Rich, how far up from the bottom of the wall here that's sitting on top of the foundation, how high up did you set up your plans? About 3 foot? I lost him again. Richard? Okay, well, rat poison. How about
Are
you
you
guys?
talking,
Yeah, about how high up off of the base is the base of the window, the bottom sill? I think you've set it up at 3 foot, if I recall. Oh, well. I'm going to set it up at about 3.5 foot. How about some of you other guys? Greg, do you have a height that you tend to put windows above the base?
I'll tell you what I do is I always have a little scale figure on my workbench, and I'll usually put that if I'm totally working off of my imagination instead of a prototype. I'll just put the person there and kind of put the window where it looks right compared to the person.
Okay, okay. Any other thoughts? Some of you other guys?
3 feet.
3
put
feet?
mine on 3.5 feet.
Okay. Yeah, that's about where I tend to shag him, is right in that neck of the woods. So, but yeah, I like Greg's idea too. That's a real good one. Okay, I've got my thing set at 3.5 foot, and that's right at the bottom of this one clap. So it actually works out really well. So I'm going to go on ahead and mark that clap here. So I've got it. Okay. And so now I've got the width of this thing, and I've got the bottom, and then all I need is the height of it. And these are, instead of the map calipers, these are a little bit different calipers. They've got this thumb screw on it. They're drafting calipers, I believe, but I like them because it sets them, and they don't tend to move when I move my caliper. So I've got the height there. So, and from that clap, and wow, look at that. It just works out on the bottom of another clapboard. So, woohoo, that worked out well. All right, and so now I can just put this back in my little handy dandy holder over there. And so I can go through and do my marks. I've switched over to a drafting pencil, and this thing is extremely sharp. So I use a Draftsman's pencil sharpener to keep it sharp, and I just drop a lid in as need be. So how about some of you other guys, when you're doing your layout work to set in cuts for windows and doors, what are some of the tricks you guys use?
I've got that same pencil and sharpener that you do. But I swear, I use the pencil one time and the little tip breaks off.
It's probably because of the lead that you're using? What lead type are you using?
It's the lead that came with it, because it came with 2 pieces and I'm about halfway through the second one. And I know there's softer and harder, but since I haven't had to reorder any yet, I haven't really looked into it.
Okay, yeah, I suspect that you're using a softer lead. And so I would tend to order 2 of your leads, but trying to recall which lead I've got in here right now. I can't recall. I've got about 5 different leads that I tend to move around in them. The thing of it is that I've got multiple of these pencils, and I keep different leads in them. So this is my kind of medium one, and this one has got a hard lead in it. And you can see that there's color differences between the 2 pencils, but
Yeah, so if I find out what came with mine and just order something harder, at least I'll be going in the right direction.
yeah. And the leads, I'd order 2 or 3 different ones, because you'll find that you might want to use one for one thing and something for something else. The harder ones also are real handy if you're doing manual nail holes and things. And as well as not, for making scribes or something in foam. The softer leads, if you are using scribed wood or something like this, and you don't want to leave a real mark on your surface, but you need to mark something briefly, like here, I just tend to draw my lines past my cut marks always. Then the softer pencils don't leave an indent. So I order a couple of different leads, I guess is what I'm telling you. And that's why I have multiple pencils loaded.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, whenever I'm laying out walls and doing windows and doors like you are right there, I always do it from the back. And I guess it's just because I find working on a flat surface a little easier. I don't catch it when I'm maybe going up and down the clapboards.
Yeah, it's kind of, I do it both ways. This one I'm just cutting from the front. And the reason I'm cutting this one from the front is the clapboards. I'm trying to avoid on my edges having the stuff kind of rip on to the outside. Where it would be.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Ripping to the outside. So I'm kind of doing it that way. Now this is a real narrow window. It's tall and narrow. So, but I did, I think you can see this. I did just make my marks there. And then I went through and put my window up next to it to make sure that my marks made sense.
Hey, Chris, is that your 16-foot wall?
Let's see here. I think it is. Yeah, it's actually 16 and a half.
I don't have a window where you put yours.
Okay. Well, I'm putting a window in it on that side. So, because the office will be sitting
Okay.
right here.
Okay.
So I've got the window towards the office.
So I didn't put my window there because I'm going to do that slider door. So I don't want the window interfering with that.
Okay. Yeah, I just chose to do it this way. All right. Now comes the next trick that I use for cutting out wood things. And I go through and actually drill little tiny holes. So I'm going to get out another one of my handmade tools. This is nothing more than 2 hard pieces of wood, just that were cut real square, and I've just glued them together. I've got about 4 of these blocks, but they're nice because you can put them up and use them for setting up walls and floors and getting vertical things. The other thing that if you build these yourself, what you'll want to do is right back here against this joint right here, you will want to go through and put in a real small saw blade kerf, or just like a couple of draws of a saw blade through there, or a hacksaw blade flat up flush against this. It doesn't need to be very deep, you know, a 1/16 to a 1/64 of an inch, something like that. The reason being is when you're working with styrene, which is, you know, one reason you want to have one out of wood is when you use your liquid styrene cement, the cement that's joint together, the styrene cement does not weep through on the back side of the surfaces, and that helps you control your styrene cement. So, but I also use this thing as my drilling platform because it holds it steady, and I just have a small drill bit that I keep loaded all the time. And I'm going to come in and I'll make a hole here so that you guys can see it. Come on here. I think you guys can see that hole. I'm having a real tough time. It's 180 degrees off, and it just really messes me up. I'm sorry, I haven't gotten used
Right there,
to it.
Chris.
So you can see where I put a punch mark with a pencil, and it's just on the insides of both of the corners there. And so that's where I'm going to drill my hole. And I'm just doing this for the future thing. I won't cover this each and every time, by the way, guys. I'm just going to do it a few times at the starting here when we go through and when I introduce a new technique. And
You're
then
doing each corner?
Yeah, and I'm going to do one on each corner. And then I'll cut in between them. And I typically will use my harder pencil and just start the nail. You know, I just punch it with the pencil. And that's why I use that medium lead in there, Greg. And then I can go through and I just make my hole real quick. And then of course, it's just the typical woodworking. You know, I'm drilling on a wood surface so that the backing doesn't, you know, come through or break or split or whatever. And by drilling these little holes, it helps prevent the splitting of the wood. So now I've got my 4 holes cut, and then I'm going to grab my 16 blade and make my scribe marks. And I'm going to shut up. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to let you guys talk because I know there's other tricks to the trade. The other trick to the trade is putting tape on the back side of this, which I'm not doing here. So anyway, go on ahead. What other tricks do you guys use?
Hey, Chris, you know, one of the other sessions, you showed us the window cutter. It cuts out the whole window with I guess with a hammer. I was just curious, why aren't you using that on this project?
Because quite frankly, this window is way too narrow for that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I see. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, it's just, it's too wide for this. Come on, I know you're there somewhere, but it's too wide. And so I can't use the punch on this. And that's the small punch. They come in a few different sizes, but that's the smallest one I've got. I'll use it when I open the other door though.
Okay. I've had my eye on it for many years and never bought one, so I was just kind of curious how it works.
Yeah, it's just because of the size of this grant window. It's just a little bit.
Yeah, I
too narrow
got
for
you.
it, and
I
that's-
got you.
That's the reasoning. How about some of you other guys out there?
Hey, Chris,
Yeah.
I use one of these. It's a fret saw.
A what saw?
They call them fret saws. They're for a piercing saw.
Oh, okay, a thread.
Okay, well, I put the hole in, just like you do there. Then I use one of these with a wood blade in and cut along the pencil line. Works
Okay,
great. You don't get any split wood or you break anything unless you really force the saw through. Now, the blade that's in there right now is one for actually cutting like brass. If you want to cut thin brass, forgot how many teeth there are per inch, but there's quite a few. So basically that's what I use if I do something like that.
okay. Well, that's an interesting idea. There's another thing that you could do too, is you could use one of the micro saws, or you could actually use a saw that's mounted in a X-Acto blade.
I've got one of those too, but you need an
Yeah.
awful big hole to get that in.
Yeah, but the problem of it is you got to start the hole to get this sucker into it. So that doesn't always work. The other thing that you could use is what's called a micro saw blade. And I have to get into my cutting thing. Tamiya makes these blades, and they are fine craft saws. These are great for styrene, but what they do is it's like an etched metal.
Right there, Chris.
And you fold them over and then put them into a handle, a knife handle, and they're super sharp. They're like an X-Acto knife sharp, and they're very fine saws. They work great for styrene. I haven't had a whole lot of use on them on wood, however. I just tend to do it the old manual way on wood. So,
You know, a really good saw is these veneer saws as well. I don't know if you can see that, but they're about 70 teeth per inch. So they're, you can get them at Lee Valley Tools and whatnot, but I find them exceptional for cutting straight lines. So you draw it towards you like a Japanese saw, and they don't wander at all because of the curve in the top of the blade.
okay, and I'm sorry, who was that talking? I missed.
Sorry, that was Daryl. Yeah, I don't know if you saw me on the screen there or not, but if you go to, I'll put it in the chat, the particular saw that I use, but it's like our Zona saws, but it's much finer, and it's hollow ground, so it's the blades aren't splayed outwards; they're straight, the teeth. And it's just exceptional. The veneer guys use it because you get a really nice clean cut with no tear out. So
Okay,
I'll post that in the chat for you.
well, thank you. That's a real good idea. Another trick that you can use when cutting these out, and you're using the technique that I'm using here, is you can cut an X in between the holes and connect the two opposite diagonal corners with an X cut, and then make your side cuts and break it out. That's another way to help prevent the splitting. So, but anyway, what else do we got out there? This isn't supposed to be watching me build, guys. Come on, I need your input.
Well, I know sometimes if I'm cutting something through from the back and maybe I have a really thin window frame out front where I have to be extra careful, I'll just wait until I can feel it starting to go through and then come around and finish the cut from the front.
Okay. Yeah, you've seen me flip it over a couple of times and use exactly what Greg just mentioned there on when I was cutting out the basic walls. So that's a technique that I use. The problem with all of this in trying to show all of this stuff is there's so many things that after doing this stuff for so long, you do it second nature and you don't even think about telling people that you're doing that. You know, it's just common. You just do it. It's like riding a bicycle.
So I've got a comment. Does anybody else besides Daryl use a laser cutter to do this? It's just that I'm watching you. See, I'm new back into the hobby, and I'm watching you. I've never had to actually cut a window out of scribed wood like that. I've mainly built kits, and all the window openings obviously were pre-cut. And I'm just watching you cut that, and I'm thinking to myself, in the amount of time it took you to cut out the four walls and to cut out a window, I would have had time to draw it out, export it to my, go downstairs into the basement and cut the wall out on my laser cutter. And I probably could have done it faster than it's taken you to do one window.
Yeah. Well, what can I say? Old school.
I understand.
But yeah, no.
I think you're right, William. And I do know a couple of people who they had gotten the laser cutter not with the intention of getting into a business, but they just are doing enough work for themselves. One guy named Bernie Kempinski, who builds his layout O-scale Civil War era. So he has to make everything for himself. And he got a laser cutter just for that. But I think most modelers, I don't know. Sure, I'd love to have one, but it's just not in the cards.
Yeah.
Well, just so that you know, the laser cutter I bought is not a CO2 laser. It's a diode laser. I got it, last year? I've had it for about 6 months or so. I paid 230 euros for it. So probably about 250 bucks.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
Yeah,
it's a small 5-watt laser. It doesn't cut fast. It can't cut thick, but it can easily cut 1/8 of an inch, which is more than thick enough for anything I'm going to be cutting.
Yeah. I would rather put my money into strip wood than into a laser. But I'm pulling out a jeweler's file, just a flat file, kind of square up my cut here.
Another tip I'd like to say to some people is if you get some thin wood like Chris is using, you want to put a piece of masking tape on the back side when you're using your X-Acto to cut out the front side so it won't split.
Yeah. Okay, so hopefully I've got this thing cut so that the window will fit in this right now. And I've got to widen it some. It came off a whole pane somehow. I don't know how I did that, but that's weird. It's the first time that's happened. I have the right height, but I missed the whole thing's too narrow. It's weird. Haven't had that happen before. So, okay. Let's see here. Will, about how much time do we have left here today?
It depends on how long you want to go. We're at we're at an hour and a half.
We're at an hour and a half. How about with the crowd? Let me get a little bit of feedback from you guys. Is this format working for you guys?
Doing very well, Chris. Just keep it
Yeah,
up.
fine, fine.
Yeah, and I like the being able to interact with conversing while you're working on it. I'm learning a lot from other people.
Okay.
I think this is a lot better, Chris. There's more interaction.
Okay.
You know what? You must have reset your calipers for something else and thought it was for the width.
I don't know what I did, but I sure messed it up somewhere, somehow. And it's like, I don't know how I did that.
Doesn't matter. You messed it up in the right way. You made it too small. You can always make it bigger.
Well, I've got techniques for shutting it down, but it just goes to show for those modelers out there that are doing things for the first time, you know, we all boo-boo and you just flow with it. And the best modelers are the guys that have figured out 18 different ways to hide each mistake.
That's
So,
right.
you know, we're all going to make mistakes. Well, with that, I think I'm going to go on ahead and kick it into a 29-cent after show. So you guys out on YouTube, I'm going to go on ahead and call it a day. I am going to go through and cut out the rest of my walls and the windows and the basic doors. I'm going to leave the two large doors until next week, but I'm going to go through and do this. And then next week, we will get into what I said I was going to do today, which is do the bracing and do the trim work. And we're going to go through, color the trim work and do the bracing and maybe even try to paint the backside of the wall to seal it. We'll just have to kind of see how far we get. I'm thinking of trying a new gluing technique, but I need to get a little bit more information before I go fully into that. So, and with that, I think I'm going to go on ahead and bring my computer down here, and I will straighten out my boo-boo. I think you guys all can know where I'm going. Is there anybody that has any questions before I say goodbye?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Chris, one thing I think that would help, especially people on YouTube who may not be able to ask questions later and stuff. When you're talking about doing the inside and bracing and stuff, one thing that always has to be taken into consideration is if you're detailing or showing the interior of a building or not, you know, such as you may just paint the walls or you may actually put in bracing that looks like framing or something. And sometimes knowing what you plan to do explains some of why you're doing something.
Okay, yeah, and you've got a real good point, and that's why I've set up the placard as a discussion on the thing, because that's something that I think all of us can agree that we can probably sit here and talk about an hour with no problems on that subject, on the bracing and application and a few tricks. Do you paint the walls before or after the bracing? There's pros and cons. Do you even bother painting? You know, glues, all sorts of different things, as well as thinking ahead a little bit about what about my corner trim and accounting for spaces there? And what about accounting for the two different corner braces, making space? And, you know, how thick does my bracing need to be and how much of it do I need? So yeah, a lot of functionality issues to kind of go through and cover and kind of kick around for everybody to think about in the process. So hopefully everybody learned a little bit of something and has a little bit of an idea, and this was worth your time. So I do want to thank everybody for showing up, and I'm going to go on ahead and cut off the YouTube feed.
Chris,
Yeah.
Heath did show up, but he left his computer screen and went into
Okay.
another room.
Yeah, he's probably at work, so we'll come back to Heath later on.
Okay.
I am going to show one thing real quick here that did bring up, and let me do this, share screen, and where is, how come that's not doing that? I wanted to show, what I wanted to show was virtual portion of screen, basics. How come I can't get to my desktop?
It's the upper left choice.
Okay, screen. Oh, there we go. Thank you. By the way, guys, this is a building that Dave Guffey built and posted late last year or early this year on one of the railroad forums, and it should look pretty familiar. He built it from the same concept drawing that most of us are using, or that I chose to use here, and it is in 1/29th scale. So it's a oddball scale, it's a dollhouse scale. But just to let you know, I had no idea that this was in existence out there. And Richard Wolfanger brought this to my attention and Dave's work. So I just kind of wanted to show you and let you know that this concept drawing that we picked out is actually people do use that technique of going through and searching down those type of pictures on the internet, and then use those concept drawings to build models from it. So that's the 1/29th share there. And one final question, is there anybody on that is in one of the My Builds that's currently on the Wednesday nights? And do you have any questions or anything about the My Build that you may be doing right now that we could address? Because we've got a whole ton of modelers on here that if you have a question about that, with the brain power that we got on here, we can probably give you a hint. Okay. I'm not seeing anything. All right. Well, for the fourth and last time, we'll see everybody next week. I thank you all for coming and joining us. And I'm going to go on ahead. And Will, you can cut off the live stream to YouTube.
Yep.
You've got that killed?